We're thinking about Christmas today, a simple Christmas. Welcome, it's time for another look into the life and message of Elisabeth Elliot. She called us to live to a higher standard and not be satisfied with just throwing a little religion into life. As our series continues in the coming weeks, we'll hear from family, friends, and others like you who were influenced by Elisabeth's life and message. Welcome. It's so good to have you with us again today, or for the first time. Well, we begin our short Christmas series today, and we're looking at a simple Christmas. Expect less, give more, and making the most of Christmas. We'll be hearing about a Christmas letter and a listener. We've recently set up a listener comment line, and this is the first time we'll be hearing from someone who took the time to leave a comment. Thank you, Ellie. That coming up later. First, though, think about a Christmas day around the year 1900. Some weighty issues about Alzheimer's disease, for instance, how it devours the brain but cannot kill the spirit. Expect less, give more.
We have just finished eating the delicious dinner prepared by my grandmother, who was surely the world's best cook. Some of this is hazy and indistinct. None of us believe this hazy business, for I could not have been more than 3 years old. At that time, I was the only grandchild on both sides of the house and the beginning of a new generation, so I enjoyed, undisputed, the center stage. And this year is in honor of my grandmother, she says, and I would like to use one of my favorite of her Christmas stories, written since she has been in her 90s. I think that children need to be reminded that Christmas has not always been as it is now. Maybe we could enjoy the season more if we could expect less and give more. The gifts, I remember, may have come at one Christmas time or over a number of such scenes. Anyway, I can see a pair of navy blue leggings to pull over my shoes and stockings, for this was long before the days of the practical snowsuits. And we lived only a half mile from the southern shore of Lake Ontario, where the winters were fierce and long. My grandmother had knit the leggings for me, and I somehow sensed, even at that age, that love had gone into each stitch, doubling their warmth. One Christmas, there was a little willow rocking chair, just the right size for a tiny girl, and it matched Grandma's. I'm sure that the greatest gift of all was Topsy. I remember her well, but the actual first meeting with her was too far back for me to recall. Strictly speaking, Topsy was a rag doll, but she was really much more than that. She was the product of the skill and ingenuity of my grandmother Richards and her mother, my great-grandmother Lundy. She was the embodiment of love from these grandmothers for a little auburn-haired girl who had to play by herself. Topsy showed wonderful and complicated workmanship. Her sturdy body was fashioned from unbleached muslin, stuffed, and put together in such a way that all her joints would bend, so she could be made to sit up or even walk with a little help. Her face had been cut from a picture and pasted securely to the muslin. Her hair was a real masterpiece, a beautiful glossy brown. The older grandmother had saved her combings until she must have a large amount. Hair wasn't shampooed nearly as often as today, but was brushed thoroughly each day and saved in a hair receiver. I wonder if there are any women as old as I am to remember a hair receiver. It was a little celluloid box on my mother's dresser. I think my grandmother also had one with a crystal box with a silver top, and there was a hole about 1 inch in diameter on top of the lid. And so each day when a lady combed out her hair, she would comb out the brush and put the combings of the hair into that hair receiver. So the two grandmothers had laboriously straightened these hairs one at a time, laid them side by side, then sewed them securely to Topsy's head, all around the edge of her face. This was so well done that her hair staunchly withstood 2 generations of being brushed, combed, tied with ribbons, and arranged in various styles. Topsy's clothing was exquisite. Old-fashioned brown calico with sprigs of tiny orange flowers and green leaves was used for her dress, with ruffles around the bottom, which nearly covered her black cotton stockings. These stockings were made from the grandmother's old stockings. Her pretty shoes were made from black wool material with embroidered flowers and handmade lace for eyelets. Her underwear was fine white muslin, daintily edged in tatting, all made, of course, by the hands of these loving grandmothers, who so enjoyed working together on any project. Topsy lived a long and strenuous life. I'm sure I was not always as careful of her as I should have been, and as I would be today. She was around as a member of the family, with my brothers and sisters, then later with my own children. During the years, her face was replaced at least once. Her original clothing was lost or worn out, and she was forced to wear hand-me-downs. Eventually, she came to a sad end in a burning barn where the children had been playing earlier that day. Well, it's too bad that that Christmas story has a sad end, but here's another Christmas story. There was a day when 4 of us sat around the dining room table. At the beginning of the meal, Dick prayed. I heard one of our guests sniffling. The prayer over, she quietly commented, "Alzheimer's devours the brain, but it can't kill the spirit." Dick, he's the one that prayed at the beginning of the meal now, remember? Dick does and says things and doesn't say things that clearly show brain deterioration. Some are sad, some are funny, some are both. Each new phase is frustrating to his Mrs. Caretaker, until I see that it really doesn't make any difference either. Through all this, Dick remains excited about life. He loves to serve in any capacity. He went to a doctor's office recently and he began picking up bits of paper off the floor. He thoroughly enjoys people. In that office, I found when I came out from having my eyes tested that he was making an old black lady really happy. He finds some way to make contact with children in restaurants, malls, and church. They almost always respond to him, and though I keep a sharp eye out for parents' negative reactions, it just doesn't happen. I get tickled when he walks up to an adult, puts out his hand, and says, "Hi." Most seem to think that they should know him but have forgotten him. If I can, I let them know that he has Alzheimer's. He helps at home wherever he can. Some has to be redone, but not often, now that I don't care in which of the 3 possible drawers he puts silverware and utensils. The friend who had sniffled during Dick's grace at the table visited again. She had lost her husband to cancer. I said of Dick's illness, "This is not a tragedy." She understood. We thrilled together that we are privileged to look through circumstances to the weaver of all circumstances, into good for those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. Dick has loved him, accepted Jesus when he was 6 years old at his mother's knee. How can we say that this has worked together for good for Dick? We can say it by faith, because God has said it. However, I can also see some of the ways in which God is working things together for good. Dick has had to work hard to support himself, and then us, ever since he was 9 years old. Now he can and does do exactly what he wants to do. This afternoon, for instance, while I was typing this, he spent talking and laughing with a picture of his old gym buddy, Billy Graham. That's interesting, isn't it? This dear Dick, who now has Alzheimer's, spent the afternoon talking and laughing with a picture of Billy Graham, his old gym buddy. He has never liked to make choices. I offer him choices now, but he's free not to make them. He has always struggled with expressing himself verbally. Now, there's no pressure for him to do so. He has protracted discussions with the man in the mirror. Every once in a while, a stream of nonsensical syllables, intermingled with some rhyming words, come cascading out of his mouth. His eyes twinkle with enjoyment, and so do mine, as we laugh together. It is as if the Lord has loosed his tongue. And how are all of these things working together for me? That would be a book. But Dick loves me with a tenderness that I haven't known during his busy years. And what could be more fulfilling for me than to see my committed love flowing unconditionally? I realize that Alzheimer's could be a tragedy, but for this gentle giant who has walked with his Lord, it isn't. That's the end of that particular story, but I came from a family where we had a very simple Christmas. You know, we only had a Christmas tree, and in those days we could not afford lights. It was very few people that we knew back in the days of the Depression that had lights on their Christmas trees, but we thought it was wonderful to be able to hang the balls, the Christmas balls there on the Christmas tree, and we had a beautiful white dove that went on the very top. I always wanted to be the one to put the dove on the top, and I had to be lifted up by my father in order to do that. We also had one special Christmas candlestick that we put in the front window. We didn't have a fireplace where we could hang stockings, and so we hung stockings on the foot of our beds. And mysteriously, they would be very lumpy the next morning, and we would take our stockings and go in and sit on our parents' bed and open them. A simpler Christmas. Well, do you want to simplify yours? There are all kinds of ways of doing it.
Expect less, give more. The first in our two-part look at a simple Christmas. Later on, we'll hear from a listener and how the Lord has used Elizabeth's ministry in her life. Right now, a Christmas letter to consider.
I turned 78 this month. My husband went to be with the Lord 8 years ago, at Christmas to be exact. We were childless, God's will. I do not have any living relatives. I thought I would tell you what I give friends at Christmas because I get by on a limited income. I cannot afford to buy gifts, so I do the next best thing. And I was amazed when I read this letter. I thought, what a wonderful idea, and it certainly should be very helpful to many of you. She says, I do the next best thing. I have heard that saying somewhere before. Each time I want to give a friend a gift, I just look around my home. It's no problem to find the perfect gift for a certain someone. I have a lot of lovely things that someone else would appreciate. Not junk. However, it can become junk if it just sits in a dark corner somewhere. Usually, I find out what people like or collect, and I take it from there. There is, as a rule, a story behind each gift I give. Some china item from my grandmother's china collection, etc. So I tell them the story after they open the gift, and they always enjoy that. It's so foolish to hang on to things when they can be just the right thing for a certain person to enjoy. I am at the age where I can't stand clutter, so I have a long ways to go. But I do enjoy the happy smiles when the gifts are opened. I don't believe in leaving things to people or promising this or that. I say, do it now. Make someone happy now. It is very rewarding. And besides, I just know that Grandma is pleased. God bless you all in this year. Someone asked me if I was ready for Y2K. I say, when we are in God's care, we are always ready. That's from Iris. Thank you so much, Iris, and you have really given me a wonderful idea. I have a whole lot of very nice little things that I think other people might enjoy, and it hasn't even occurred to me to give them away. So I'm going to start doing that.
And we welcome your comments, whether written or, as we'll hear later, recorded. Right now, though, let's get to the second in our short series on A Simple Christmas, making the most of Christmas. We'll hear about a plan that someone had and implemented it to give something to other students, even if there were many other students. Are we entering the Christmas season with God's heart? Do we love to give gifts? Or does it just seem like a chore? Consider with us the ingenuity that springs from love, making the most of Christmas.
Commercialization of Christmas is not new, though it doubtless gets worse. But Mr. Frank W. Sanford was not put off by that. This holiday celebrated Jesus Christ's birthday, and unless some plain leading of the Holy Spirit indicated otherwise, he entered into each Christmas season with his whole heart. He loved to give gifts and encouraged his people to do likewise on a large and generous scale. In the years when he lived with some 300 to 400 souls in the Bible school community in Maine, including many children, he would often suggest a program that called for each person to give something to each of the others. This, of course, would make a grand total that ran into thousands of presents, even though no student was getting a personal income, and few had much of anything to spend. The resultant ingenuity that went into these hundreds of projects was a joy to behold, for it sprang from love set on fire by the Christmas spirit. God so loved that he gave was often the text in December, and nearly all other occupations were suspended for most of the month. Readers might be interested, by the way, in what we did for homemade presents. One contrivance had to do with our complete dependence on kerosene lamps for illumination. Friction matches were too expensive to use every time we wished to light a lamp, so we depended on what were called lamp lighters, made of newsprint, cut into long strips, and then twisted ingeniously into pencil-sized wands about 10 inches long. Clusters of these made valuable Christmas presents. They could be lighted from the wood stove or from another lamp, thus saving matches. A different need arose from the fact that all the men who shaved used old-fashioned straight razors. And since our modern tissue paper was unknown then, they had to use pages from mail-order catalogs to wipe off the blades. 100 sheets of that thin paper, thinner than newsprint, cut about 5 inches square, and tied together with twine, made a Christmas present any man could rejoice over. Of course, the women with their sewing machines and the men with their shop tools made larger and more durable gifts. But I mention these two paper productions because, as a child, I helped make them myself. I didn't tell you at the beginning that this is my friend, Frank Murray, who is now 90 years old, I think. He's the one telling this story. He made these paper productions himself. Dresses, aprons, rag dolls, cloth holders for handling hot things, caps, hats, and even tea cozies came from the women's department. Sleds, toy wheelbarrows, wooden toys of various kinds, such as building blocks, came from the men's shops. What joys we had at the sight of a great, tall Christmas tree, well laden with such things, and hundreds more, nothing wrapped, but all too far away to read name tags until the right moment arrived. Sometimes we had 7 trees, once even 12. So great was the burden of gifts. Christmas at Shiloh was a time to remember, and Shiloh was where there was a large Bible school in Maine. Mr. Sanford, he was the president of Shiloh, had little patience with the religious sniping at Christmas that became so fashionable in the later years of his life. What if the exact date was not correct? Was that any reason for refusing to honor Jesus' birth? He personally felt, after careful study of chronology, that December 25 was indeed correct. But he was quite indifferent to the sanctimonious notion that a December celebration was sacrilegious because it may have been a carryover from some pagan holiday. Sunday was a pagan name too, but did that mean we should not honor the Lord's Day? And may I gently put in a parenthesis here that the word is sacrilegious, not sacrilegious. It comes from the word sacrilege, S-A-C-R-I-L-E-G-I-O-U-S. Well, that's just a lesson for you children that need to know how to spell things. The same applied to the Christmas tree tradition. Who cared if it was a hand-me-down from Teutonic paganism? Anything that is dedicated to the glory of Jesus Christ by a reverent heart, whether a green tree or a silver bauble, loses all pagan flavor it may ever have had. Paul saw an altar in Athens inscribed to an unknown god, and he promptly appropriated it to the honor of the true one. The earth, after all, is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. So why not grasp any material object and dedicate it to his worship? This element of common sense characterized our teacher's approach to everything. The most outstanding element of Mr. Sanford's Christmases was his expectancy of the Lord's return. He loved to dwell on the manger birth and the 2-year later visit of the Magi, but he would always balance that vision with a look ahead to the second coming. Jesus is no longer a baby, he would remind us. That part of his mission is over. He was first a prophet, he is now a priest, and he is soon to return as a king in power and great glory. On his birthday, think of a king, not a baby. As he grew older, his thoughts turned more and more this way and less to Bethlehem. One of my most stirring memories of him had to do with a December issue of the College World, which I was then charged with editing. It was one of the times when he and I collaborated on an issue for publication, and we entitled it "Lightning Changes When He Arrives." Here are some excerpts from that article, mostly Mr. Sanford's own words. Quote, "He came first as a little baby, nestling in his mother's arms. Like any other infant, even when grown to manhood, he was meek and lowly, not resisting evil, dying shamefully between 2 thieves. Then he was a lamb, the Lamb of God. Now he is coming as a ram, the Ram of the ages, in power and great glory. Like a flame of fire he will suddenly appear, executing vengeance on those who do not know God, dealing sternly with all those who have disregarded his gospel." And I want to reread the beginning of that paragraph. I didn't get it all myself the first time. Speaking of Jesus, Mr. Sanford said he came first as a little baby, nestling in his mother's arms like any other infant. Even when grown to manhood, he was meek and lowly. And you know that word meek means, among other things, teachability. When he was grown to manhood, he was meek and lowly, not resisting evil and dying shamefully between 2 trees. Then he was a lamb when he was nailed to the cross. Remember, he was dying what was then a shameful death, but they were thieves. They were not the Son of God who was dying. He was a lamb, the Lamb of God. Now he is coming as a ram, the Ram of the ages. He came first, descending the Mount of Olives on earth's lowliest beast of burden, the donkey. But now he comes as King of Kings, riding a white charger, irresistibility personified, followed by white-clad armies in speed, power, majesty, and blinding glory. Earth and all its inhabitants will reel at the series of lightning changes that will take place when he arrives. The rest of the issue details some of the changes, as outlined in Scripture, But these 2 paragraphs give some idea of the spirit that animated that grand and saintly man at every Christmas with him that I can remember. He was a Christian warrior at heart, and far more at home in scenes of divine conquest than among sheep and shepherds and wise men. He taught us then to keep Christmas rousingly, and also to give till it hurt, where we could find occasion, but always to look ahead more than back. I believe such a viewpoint is the best possible antidote for the annual depression that Christmas fever tends to place on godly people. Celebrate not simply the Bethlehem beginning, but the whole story of Jesus' saving mission, most of which is still ahead of us at the glorious coming again. I do want to suggest that you scale down your Christmas giving. One Christian family wrote to me that they don't give any presents until Epiphany, which is January the 6th, the date which is usually celebrated because that was when the wise men came to bring their gifts to Jesus. So if you get very nervous and upset about the Christmas rush, put it off till January the 7th. Think about the baby in the manger and sing the Christmas carols on Christmas, but have the presents for Epiphany. I think that's a wonderful idea. January the 6th. Try it. You might also agree with some relatives and close friends that you would be much happier with smaller things, useful things, homemade things.
The second in our look at a simple Christmas, making the most of Christmas. A short time ago, we set up a listener comment line so that you, through our website, could let us know how Elizabeth has made an impact in your life. Maybe you met her, maybe you didn't, maybe you heard her radio program or one of her other messages. Well, let's hear from one of our younger listeners.
I'm 17 years old, and I started listening to Elizabeth Elliot podcast a few months ago after an older woman in my church recommended it to me. And it has really encouraged me in my faith and helped me embrace my femininity and given me tips to grow up as a young woman in the church. And at the beginning of the school year, I was dealing with some anxiety, and it was funny because I opened up my phone and I had just seen that a new episode came out, and it had addressed exactly what I was dealing with. So I just want to say thank you, and this has greatly impacted me and encouraged me, and I always look forward to listening to this.
Thank you, Ellie. And if you'd like to leave a comment, go to elizabethelliot.org, click on Resources, and then Podcast. And you'll see there's a place there to leave a comment. Share a message with us. Go to elizabethelliot.org, Resources, Podcast, and then find that button, Share a Message. Well, as our time comes to an end, thanks for letting us come into your home. Maybe joining you in the office or as you took a walk today. On behalf of the Elizabeth Elliot Foundation, in cooperation with the Bible Broadcasting Network, let me invite you to check out all the resources at elizabethelliot.org. elizabethelliot.org for more talks, devotionals, videos, and more.
God bless you all in this year.
Well, until next time, may God remind you each day that you're loved with what? That's right. You are loved with an everlasting love. And say it with me. And underneath are the everlasting arms.